You wake up before the sun. You lace up your shoes. You step outside and you walk. Every single morning. And yet, the weight is still there. The energy still dips by afternoon. The belly hasn't changed in months. Maybe years. You did everything right. You showed up. You kept going. So why does your body feel like it's working against you? Here's what nobody tells you. After 50, walking is still one of the most powerful things you can do for your health. But the way your body responds to that walk, the internal chemistry it triggers, the hormones it moves, the systems it activates, changes completely. And if you don't understand what's actually happening inside your body during that morning walk, you could be missing the majority of its benefits. Or worse, making one or two small timing mistakes that quietly cancel out everything good you're doing.
This video is going to change how you see your morning walk forever. Not because we're going to make it harder, not because we're going to add 30 minutes or tell you to run intervals. We're going to show you the hidden biology of what happens to a body over 50 during a morning walk, minute by minute, and why understanding that biology might be the single most important thing you do for your health this year. Stay with us, because what comes in the next few minutes explains a lot. Let's start with something honest. If you're over 50 and you've been walking regularly, you probably started because someone, a doctor, a friend, a headline, told you it was good for you, and you believed them. You still do. But somewhere along the way, the results stopped matching the effort. You expected weight loss, but the scale barely moved. You expected more energy, but you still crash after lunch. You expected your doctor to come back with better numbers, but the inflammation markers, the blood sugar, the cholesterol, they improved slightly at best, or not at all. And the most frustrating part, you're not being lazy, you're not giving up. You show up every morning and you walk. So what's going wrong? The honest answer is, probably nothing is wrong with you specifically. What's happening is a shift in your biology that most people never get a clear explanation of. After 50, your body is playing by a completely different set of rules than it did at 35. The same inputs produce different outputs. The same habits create different results. And unless someone explains those new rules to you, you'll keep putting in effort and feeling vaguely confused about why it isn't translating the way it should. So let's talk about those rules. Let's talk about what's actually happening. Inside your cells, inside your bloodstream, inside your hormonal system. After 50. Because once you understand this, everything starts to make a different kind of sense. Here's the biological reality that most people over 50 are never clearly told. Your metabolism, the engine that converts food and movement into energy, doesn't just slow down slightly after 50. It restructures. It begins operating with a different priority system. At 35, your metabolism was primarily focused on energy. Burn fast, recover fast, stay lean, stay active. After 50, it begins shifting toward conservation. Your body starts to operate more cautiously. It holds onto fat reserves more stubbornly, particularly around the abdomen. It becomes slower to release stored energy, and it becomes far more sensitive to certain hormonal signals, especially cortisol, insulin, and estrogen, or testosterone depending on your biology. Why does this happen? Part of it is muscle. Between the ages of 40 and 70, the average person loses somewhere between 8 and 15% of their muscle mass per decade. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It burns calories at rest. It absorbs blood sugar like a sponge. It keeps your metabolism running at a higher idle. As muscle quietly declines, a process called sarcopenia, your metabolism slows with it. Not dramatically overnight, but gradually, persistently. And then there's insulin. Insulin is the hormone your pancreas releases when blood sugar rises after eating. Its job is to escort sugar out of the bloodstream and into your cells, where it gets used for energy. But after 50, the cells can start to become less responsive to insulin's signal. They don't open as easily. The sugar has to wait longer in the bloodstream. The pancreas has to pump out more insulin to get the same result. This is called insulin resistance, and it is quietly behind an enormous number of the symptoms people over 50 chalk up to just getting older. The belly fat that won't move, the afternoon fatigue, the difficulty losing weight even when eating less, the blood sugar numbers that are creeping in the wrong direction. None of this is your fault. It is a biological shift that happens to almost everyone, but it does mean that your morning walk is now one of the most powerful tools you have, if you understand how to let it do its full job. And that's exactly where things get interesting. Let's talk about what happens inside your body from the moment you step outside. In the first few minutes of walking, your muscles begin contracting rhythmically. This contraction does something remarkable. It signals muscle cells to absorb glucose, blood sugar, without needing insulin to do it. This is one of the most underappreciated facts in metabolic health. Walking, particularly in the morning, is one of the only activities that can lower blood sugar and improve insulin sensitivity through a completely insulin-independent pathway. For someone over 50 who is dealing with even mild insulin resistance, this is not a small thing. This is significant. Every morning walk is training your cells to handle blood sugar better. It is slowly, steadily reversing one of the most harmful processes in the aging body. But that's only the beginning. Around the 10 to 15 minute mark, something else begins. Your body starts releasing a cascade of anti-inflammatory molecules, sometimes called myokines, that are produced specifically by working muscle tissue. These molecules circulate through your bloodstream and quietly dial down chronic inflammation throughout the body. Chronic inflammation is now understood to be a root driver of some of the most serious conditions associated with aging: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, joint deterioration, cognitive decline. And here's what's sobering. Most people walking around after 50 have some degree of chronic low-grade inflammation they're completely unaware of. It doesn't feel like anything specific. It just feels like being older than you should. And a daily morning walk's one of the most effective natural suppressors of that inflammation that exists. By 20 minutes in, your body begins producing increased levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. This is sometimes called fertilizer for the brain. It promotes the growth of new neural connections. It supports memory, mood, and cognitive clarity. It is one of the reasons that people who walk regularly into their 60s and 70s tend to maintain sharper thinking than those who don't. Your morning walk is not just a weight management tool. It is a cardiovascular treatment, a metabolic corrective, an anti-inflammatory intervention, and a cognitive enhancer. All in one, simultaneously, every single time. But there's a mistake that quietly undermines almost all of this, and most people make it without realizing. Let's talk about what goes wrong. The first mistake is timing. For decades, people were told that exercise timing didn't matter much. Just move, anytime. It all counts. And while that's broadly true, for people over 50 with metabolic concerns, morning walking has specific advantages that afternoon or evening walking doesn't fully replicate. Morning cortisol, the hormone your body naturally produces in the early hours of the day to energize you, peaks between roughly 6 and 9 a.m. When you walk during this cortisol window, you're essentially giving your body a natural metabolic boost. Your fat cells are more willing to release stored energy. Your insulin sensitivity is at its most receptive point of the day. The anti-inflammatory benefits are amplified. Walking at 7 p.m. is still beneficial, but it's working against a different hormonal backdrop. For someone specifically trying to address belly fat, blood sugar regulation, or chronic fatigue, the morning window is genuinely superior. The second mistake is pace. There's a widely repeated idea that you need to walk fast to get benefits, that a slow stroll barely counts. This is partly wrong, and for people over 50, believing it causes real problems. For cardiovascular and metabolic health, a conversational pace, one where you can still speak in full sentences but feel slightly warm and engaged, is often the most beneficial. This moderate intensity zone maximizes fat utilization, sustains insulin-sensitive effects for longer periods, and does not spike cortisol the way high-intensity exercise does. When cortisol is chronically elevated, which happens with overexertion, poor sleep, and chronic stress, it actively promotes belly fat storage. It instructs the body to hold on to abdominal fat as an emergency fuel reserve. So paradoxically, pushing yourself too hard on a morning walk can work against your goals by elevating the very hormone that makes fat loss harder. Moderate, consistent, conversational. That is the sweet spot. The third mistake is what happens immediately before and after the walk. Many people eat a large carbohydrate-heavy breakfast right before walking. This spikes insulin before the walk even begins, shutting down the fat-burning mechanism that fasting state morning movement naturally activates. If possible, walking before breakfast, or with only a small protein snack, allows the body to pull from fat stores rather than immediately burning the sugars from that morning meal. And after the walk, many people don't eat enough protein. This is quietly one of the biggest mistakes people over 50 make. After a walk, your muscles have a short window, roughly 30 to 45 minutes, where they're particularly receptive to amino acids for repair and rebuilding. Skipping protein during this window means you're missing an opportunity to counteract the muscle loss that is slowly working against your metabolism. These are not extreme adjustments. They are small calibrations, but they make an enormous difference over time. Let's talk about belly fat specifically, because this is the thing that frustrates people the most. After 50, fat doesn't just accumulate differently, it migrates. This is a real physiological phenomenon. As estrogen declines in women and testosterone declines in men, fat that was previously distributed across the hips, thighs, and limbs begins preferentially accumulating in the abdominal region. And abdominal fat is not simply a cosmetic concern. Visceral fat, the deep belly fat that wraps around the organs, is metabolically active in a harmful way. It produces inflammatory molecules, it disrupts insulin signaling, it elevates cardiovascular risk markers, it actively worsens the very metabolic conditions it's partly caused by. This is the frustrating loop many people over 50 find themselves in. Belly fat causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance makes belly fat harder to lose. Low muscle mass slows metabolism. Slower metabolism accumulates more belly fat. Morning walking breaks into this loop from multiple directions at once. It improves insulin sensitivity directly. It reduces circulating cortisol over time with regular practice. It stimulates the hormones that signal fat release. And when sustained for longer durations, 30 to 45 minutes, it begins drawing from those deeper fat stores in a meaningful way. But here's what most people don't realize about duration. The first 20 minutes of a walk are largely fueled by available blood sugar and glycogen, the sugar stored in your muscles and liver. It's only after that initial fuel is drawn down that the body begins more heavily recruiting fat as its primary energy source. This doesn't mean the first 20 minutes are wasted. They absolutely are not. The metabolic, cardiovascular, and anti-inflammatory benefits begin within minutes. But if fat loss is a specific goal, extending your walk beyond 20 minutes, ideally to 35 or 45, activates that deeper fat-burning shift in a way a quick 15-minute stroll simply cannot. This is not about punishing yourself. It's about understanding your body's fuel priority system and working with it. Let's bring this down to the ground level, because all of this biology only matters if it translates into something you can actually do tomorrow morning. The first recommendation is time. Aim to walk in the morning, ideally within 1 to 2 hours of waking. You don't need to be out the door at sunrise. You just want to capture that morning hormonal window before the day's stress begins to elevate cortisol in less helpful ways. The second recommendation is duration. Work toward 35 to 45 minutes of continuous walking most mornings. If you're currently doing 20 minutes, add 5 minutes per week. There's no rush. Consistency over months matters infinitely more than intensity on any given day. The third recommendation is pace. Keep it conversational. You should feel warm, slightly elevated in your breathing, engaged but not gasping. If you can't comfortably hold a sentence, you're pushing slightly too hard for the metabolic goals we've discussed. The fourth recommendation is pre-walk nutrition. If you can tolerate it, try walking before breakfast at least 3 or 4 mornings per week. If you need something before heading out, opt for a small amount of protein, a handful of nuts, a boiled egg, rather than toast, cereal, or fruit juice, which will spike insulin and narrow your fat-burning window. The fifth recommendation is post-walk protein. Within 30 to 45 minutes of finishing your walk, eat a protein-forward meal or snack. Eggs, Greek yogurt, a protein shake, fish, or any lean protein source. This is your muscles' rebuilding window. use it. Protecting your muscle mass after 50 is one of the most powerful things you can do for your long-term metabolism. The sixth recommendation, but the TDN, and this one surprises people, is to add brief resistance movements 2 or 3 times per week alongside your walking. Not a gym membership, not a difficult routine. Simple body weight movements done at home. Wall push-ups, chair-assisted squats, light resistance bands. Even 10 minutes of this 3 times weekly can meaningfully slow the muscle loss that is quietly driving so many symptoms. Walking alone is powerful. Walking paired with even minimal muscle-preserving activity is transformational. Let's talk about a realistic timeline, because this is where most people either stay the course or quietly give up. In the first 2 weeks of consistent morning walking, especially with the timing and nutritional adjustments we've discussed, you will likely notice something in your energy before you notice anything in the mirror. The afternoon fatigue may ease slightly, morning fog may lift a little faster, sleep quality often begins improving within 2 weeks of regular morning walks, partly because the morning movement helps regulate the body's circadian rhythm. By weeks 4 to 6, blood sugar regulation typically shows measurable improvement. If you track fasting blood sugar or wear a continuous glucose monitor, you may begin to see steadier patterns. The post-meal spikes that were causing afternoon crashes start to flatten. Cravings for sugar and refined carbohydrates often decrease naturally. Not from willpower, but because your insulin system is becoming more functional. By months 2 to 3, body composition often begins to shift. The scale may not show dramatic changes, particularly if muscle is developing alongside fat loss. But clothing fit often changes. Waistbands feel different. This is the visceral fat beginning to respond. By 6 months of consistent practice, the cumulative metabolic impact is often profound. Inflammatory markers measured in blood tests improve. Cardiovascular indicators, resting heart rate, blood pressure, cholesterol ratios, tend to move in meaningful directions. Cognitive clarity is often reported as meaningfully better by people who've maintained a morning walk habit for 6 months or more. None of this is overnight, and that's actually a sign that it's real. Quick changes in the body are almost always water weight, glycogen shifts, or metabolic tricks that don't last. The changes that come from consistent morning walking are structural. They happen at the level of your cells, your blood vessels, your hormonal systems. They last. If you've been walking and not seeing the results you expected, we want to say this clearly. Your body is not broken. Your discipline is not the problem. Your body simply changed in ways that required a different strategy, and nobody sat down and explained it to you. The biology of the aging body is genuinely complex, and the way most health information is delivered, in headlines, in quick social media tips, in oversimplified advice, makes it nearly impossible to understand what your specific body actually needs. You are not behind, you are not failing. You are responding normally to a system that wasn't designed with people over 50 in mind. What you now understand about insulin sensitivity, cortisol, morning hormonal windows, muscle preservation, and the fat-burning timeline, this is the kind of information that changes outcomes. Not because it's magic, but because it gives you the ability to stop working against your own biology and start working with it. The morning walk you've been taking, it was never a failure. It was always doing something. You were always getting cardiovascular benefits, anti-inflammatory effects, mood regulation, blood pressure support. All of that was real. What we've done today is simply add precision to something that was already working. We've aimed it, and aimed properly. At the right time, with the right duration, supported by the right nutrition choices. A daily morning walk after 50 is one of the most powerful health interventions available to any human being. Not one of the most powerful, simple interventions. One of the most powerful, period. There are pharmaceutical interventions with smaller effect sizes. So here's where we leave you today. You now understand the hidden biology of what your morning walk is doing. Not just to your muscles, not just to your waistline, but to your blood sugar, your inflammation levels, your hormones, your brain, and your long-term metabolic trajectory. You understand why your body changed after 50, and why those changes require a different kind of engagement. You understand the common mistakes, the timing errors, the pace misunderstandings, the pre- and post-walk nutrition gaps that quietly dilute what should be an extraordinarily powerful daily habit. and you understand the realistic timeline of what to expect. Not miracles in 2 weeks. Real, structural, lasting change over months. Start tomorrow. Same walk, same shoes, same routes if you like. Just walk a little longer. Walk a little earlier if you can. Eat a little more protein when you get home. And watch what happens. Because here's something we didn't get to today. Something we'll save for the next video. There are specific combinations of walking patterns and eating windows that people over 50 can use to specifically target visceral belly fat. Not generic advice. A specific biological sequence, timed to your body's natural hormone cycles, that the research suggests may double the fat loss effects of standard morning walking. If that sounds like something worth understanding, and we think it is, that video is coming next. In the meantime, get some sleep. Tomorrow morning there's a walk waiting for you, and now you know exactly what it's capable of.